Hey, welcome back to the Secret Underground Lair. So today we're going to be making drawers for our modern console table. And we're going to make the fronts out of this beam that came from an old tobacco kiln. So it's a pretty rough piece of lumber. It's been around for over 100 years. And we're going to get 3 drawer fronts out of this. The piece has a little bit of a twist and a curve to it. So what I'm going to be doing is picking the best parts. So I'm going to take 18 inches from here to here. The drawers need to be 16.5 inches wide, so that gives me a little room to play on either end. Then we're going to split this right down the middle to give us 2 drawer fronts. And we're going to take another 18 inches out of this piece here, get our 3rd drawer front, and a little bit left over. So that's our target for today, 3 drawers. First task is cutting the rough blanks. 1 cut here, 1 cut here, 1 cut here. Now our pieces need to be 4.5 inches, actually 4.25 inches in total, but I'll cut them at 4.5 and trim them later. So I'm going to take this down to 4.25 or 4.5 on both pieces, and then I have straight edges on either side, at least just good enough to work with to get a cut these guys in half. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to get to. These pieces are pretty rough. Like I say, it is a 100-year-old tobacco kiln. I mean, even the width of this is a 2x6, which is actually I think it was a 2x8 originally. Literally 2 inches by 8 inches. So for these cuts, I'm getting it about 4.5, a little more than 4.5. So I'm ready now to do some jointing kind of work on the saw, which will mean putting the piece through one way and flipping it over and doing it the other. And I think what I'm going to do is swap out the blade, see if I have a sharper blade. So I'm switching over to a 40-tooth blade. I had a 60-tooth blade in there, which is really a finished blade. It was a wrong blade for what I was doing for a lot of that, which may explain some of the scorch marks on other pieces. Anyway, now onto a 60-tooth blade. My local surplus store. You read the price on that? $12.99. You watch how well this cuts. Back in a sec. All right, new blade in. We're set to go about 1 inch. That'll rip that almost right down the middle. Like a hot knife through butter. Okay, there's going to be 2 drawer fronts, I think. Those will work out pretty well. And we've got 1 more here. What I'm going to do now is run these through the surface planer. So I have a relatively flat surface here. We'll run them through like this to get rid of that rough edge. Do that on all 4 pieces. When we get that smooth, then we'll flip it over, get the other side. Glad I swapped out that blade. It's going to make cutting really easy. Okay, let me get the surface planer up here and we'll carry on. Got the surface planer all set up. Got my little stack of wood here, 4 pieces to go through. So I'll put you on time lapse. This is obviously going to be a multi-pass operation, so I'll just kind of let you watch it all go by. So I've got a couple more conventional pieces of lumber that we're going to use for the sides and backs of the drawers. Just rip them through the table saw again, getting to 4.5 inches. We'll fine tune it later. Now work on cutting the pieces to the appropriate widths, 14 or 16 and a half. And I'll try to be a little bit generous on those measurements too. So I'm cutting these pieces, the 14-inch pieces, gross cut of 15 inches, and my 16 and a half that I'm taking out of here, I'm making that 18 inches like the other pieces we have. So I'm just going to cut this in the way that's easiest, most balanced on the saw. Starting with that one. So I'll take some material out of here, picking the best pieces of wood. I should be able to get 2 16 and a halves and 2 14s out of this. We'll make that 18 just for fun. Alrighty, you got 6 drawer sides, 3 drawer backs, and we got the 3 drawer fronts already cut. So I'm going to stop here, get a bite of lunch. So back from lunch, and I took a slightly different tack than trying to glue those pieces that were split. Instead, what I did is I took some of this leftover wood from that was cut off the narrow strips, just glued the 2 pieces together, and then I sanded them down. So I have much more a nicer finished product here than we would have had with the split wood. So there's 2 sides cut, and now I'm just going to go through these other pieces. These are 4 other sides. Then I'll go through our front and back pieces. Just going to use the belt sander to get them all the surfaces nice and even and ready for fine sanding, but it'll probably be some joinery before the finer sanding. That's all our fronts and sides sanded down. Now we'll cut them down to the final dimension and double check all my measurements again and make those cuts. So the moment of truth has come. We're cutting these pieces to their final shape now. So we got them at exactly the right width, which is 4.5. And we're cutting these down to 14 and the pile over here down to 16 and a half. So we'll go through these first 6, then I'll adjust the fence and cut the others. Sides, fronts and backs. They're going to be setting up for doing a box joint jig, so that's joints are going to be going, corners are going to come together like that. A little tricky. I have to set up, do a little bit of measuring, some calculation, and I'm going to set up a little jig for that. So I'll be back when I have that all ready to go. Okay, we are set up with a little box joint jig. I am going to cut these as 1/2-inch box joints. I had originally thought about doing 3/4, the same thickness as the wood. But I'm kind of thinking a 1/2-inch might give it a little more interesting look. 3/4, it'll just look a little too manipulated and chunky, in my opinion. But let's see how this goes. This is just a test piece, so we'll do a test cut. Might wind up doing 2 or 3 of these test cuts until we have this thing dialed in perfectly, and then we'll do all our box joints on all of the drawers. So, without further ado, what could possibly go wrong? So these are a little snug, probably too snug to work. They do go in, but that's a pretty snug fit. Just going to tap it and see what happens. I think we need to make the space just a little bit bigger, which would imply this piece needs to shuffle just a tiny bit. Nice looking joint. I don't know, I'm kind of inclined to go with it. I did make a little mistake lining up the second piece, and I will try that again. Yeah, be back in a second. Still a snug fit. But that might work. And it does fit up really nicely on the edges. Pleased with that. So I think I will go ahead with that. And before putting the joints together, I'll probably just run a little bit of sandpaper through them just to take a little bit off, make it a little less binding. But yeah, that's going to work. I think the scale is going to be okay too. All right, a lot of box joint cutting. Here we go. So I'm going to want the fronts and the backs to have this top box joint finger the full 1/2 inch width. The bottom finger is just slightly narrower, so not by much, but just enough. So the top joint is going to be full width, so I'm starting with the fronts and backs, and I'm going to do them all the same. Start by putting it in here, go across, flip it over this way and go across. So probably put you on time lapse for this because there's just a ton of cutting. Here we go. So here we have all of the sides. Here we have the fronts and backs. And we've got to join them together. But of course, before they get joined together, I'm going to have to cut a slot in the bottom of them to mount the bottom of the drawer. I don't have the bottoms yet, so I'm going to do that tomorrow morning, run out and get some material. We make the bottoms and then we can start assembling these drawers. That was a little nerve-wracking, gotta tell you. You don't get a lot of second chances when you're making box joints like this, so let's just hope they all go together nicely. So far so good. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. See you on the next video.